Hey, so this is the OnePlus Open, and this is hands down the best foldable phone in 2023. Let me tell you why. So just like most of my reviews on this channel, let's talk about the OnePlus Open specs real quick. The OnePlus Open is using the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, so this is a true flagship through and through. Besides that, it has 16 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM, 512 gigs of storage, but it also supports Wi-Fi 7, so whenever all the Wi-Fi 7 routers come out, theoretically, the OnePlus Open can reach speeds up to 46 gigabits per second over Wi-Fi versus the 9.6 gigabits per second we now have on Wi-Fi 6. Now we're also getting a 4,805 mAh battery, which isn't the largest on a foldable, but still a bit more than Samsung's offering. And we're also getting a 67-watt charging brick out of the box, which can fast charge the phone to 100% in just 42 minutes. Okay, so probably the most important thing that you're gonna wanna know about this OnePlus Open is the screen. Now, this is where OnePlus, I think, has Samsung beat in almost every aspect, from the screen size to its display quality. So starting off with the cover screen, this is a 6.3-inch AMOLED display that supports LTPO 3.0 that dips down to 1 Hz and goes up to 120 Hz. Now the best part about this display is just how bright this thing gets. OnePlus and Oppo managed to put an insane display on this device that gets up to 2800 nits of peak brightness. Now just as a refresher, the Pixel Fold goes up to 1450 nits, which is decent. Z Fold 5 goes up to 1750 nits, which is plenty bright. The iPhone 15 Pro series gets up to 2000 nits, again, very bright. And the new Pixel 8 Pro at 2400 nits, which is stupid bright. And this OnePlus Open at 2800 nits is just ridiculous. Now that is just peak brightness. That doesn't mean, it'll sustain at 2800 nits for hours on out, but in certain scenarios where you just need that extra boost in brightness, this display will be able to provide that. Now, the inner display, on the other hand, is where things get really special. And for context, I used the Z Fold 5 for a month straight, ditching my iPhone and other phones that I was reviewing. And going from that to this is just a night and day difference. First, it's a 7.82-inch display, 120 Hz, LTPO3, 2800 nits of peak brightness. But what's really impressive here is how OnePlus and Oppo are able to minimize the crease, and not only from a visual perspective, but also when you're, touching the display. On the Z Fold 5, you can clearly tell that there's that crease in the middle, and you can feel it too. Here on the OnePlus Open, it's not nearly as visible, but you also don't feel that crease when you're going through the middle of the phone. It's just crazy. Now, performance. I'm not going to touch on this too much just because the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is pretty much old news at this point. It's the best processor for now, and it's technically the fastest processor available on Android at the moment, and there's not much to say here other than, you won't be disappointed with its performance here on the OnePlus Open. Whether you're playing games or you have multiple apps open, it's smooth like butter. But let's talk about its software though. What OnePlus did here on the multitasking front for a foldable is kind of cool. So instead of having your windows resized, to a bunch of different formats, OnePlus has this thing called Open Canvas, where you can have 3 app windows on the screen at any time, whether it's vertical or horizontal, but only 2 main active windows that you can work on, sorta. Now you'll still be able to see the third one kind of off to the side. Now this is kind of cool because it keeps the optimized app format without it having to resize to a smaller or bigger window that's not as optimized, and then the UI just gets funky. Now, if you do want to see all 3 in one go, just pinch the screen with 4 fingers and all the windows get smaller. And here you can see 2 apps that are stacked on top of each other, either on the left or right side of the screen. And the other half of the screen is going to have that full-size window for the third app. Now, unfortunately, there's no way to set which app's gonna have that full-size window after you've added the third app, at least not yet. Maybe that's coming in a future update, but if you have 3 apps that you constantly use and you wanna create, some sort of favorite space save, you can save the setup and launch it from the home screen right away, which is pretty neat. Now, one thing I don't love though is that when you only have 2 apps running side by side, is that you can't necessarily configure one app to be slightly bigger than the other, like having some sort of micro adjustment like what you're able to do on the Z Fold 5. Here on the Open, it's a predetermined window size, and it's either 50%, which is split in half at all times, or 80% where you have the main app front and center, and the other window that's opened is scooted off to the side and can only be interacted when it's front and center as the main app. But at 50%, you'll be able to tap and scroll at these two windows at the same time, just like any other split screen multi-window on other foldables. Now, I know that they want apps that are optimized for this sort of thing, but having micro adjustments to its size wouldn't be all that terrible since the Z Fold 5 does a great job at that. Besides that though, you also have a taskbar at the bottom of the screen where you can access all your apps that are installed. You have quick access to your recent photos, documents, or other files that you want in an instant. And then you also have space for your recent opened apps or whatever apps that you choose to add to the dock. Now, one of my biggest gripe here with the taskbar is that you can only add 4 apps. There's no other options to add any more, and it's just so limiting in my opinion. Now, hopefully they can address this so that we can add more than 4 app icons here and have the taskbar shrink as more apps are added. But for now, yeah, you're limited to 4. Now, in terms of battery, I've been getting pretty superb battery here with the OnePlus Open, about 5.5 to 6 hours of screen on time over the last month. And with that 67-watt wired charging, it's pretty nice to have that, especially after using the Z Fold 5 and the Pixel Fold with, somewhat slow charging speeds. Now, the Open doesn't have wireless charging for whatever reason, and OnePlus couldn't exactly tell us why. They said because of lack of space internally, but I'm not really buying that. So if you love wireless charging, that's unfortunately not here on the Open. All right, now let's talk about this ginormous camera module on the back of the Fold. So the OnePlus Open probably has the best camera system on any Fold, and probably the best camera on any OnePlus device in a long time. From their partnership with Hasselblad to the 3 high-res cameras on the back, this is hands down the best Fold with the best cameras. Okay, so the cameras on the back consist of a 48 megapixel main wide camera with its first of its kind pixel stack sensor that can compete with a 1-inch camera phone. There's also a 64 megapixel 3x telephoto camera that can do 6x digital zoom and a 48 megapixel ultra wide camera. Oh, and there's also a selfie camera on the cover display and the inner display as well. You have a 32 megapixel camera on the outside cover display and a 20 megapixel on the inner display. But we're not gonna focus on that. We're just gonna focus on the cameras on the outside since this is a foldable after all. Now, over the course of 3 weeks, I have gotten a couple of updates on this phone, which did change a couple of things on the camera front, but nothing too drastic in terms of photo quality. So what you'll see in the samples and what I've noticed and my thoughts after the updates hasn't changed. With that being said, in ideal lighting, no matter what focal length you shoot, whether it's the main 1x camera, the ultra wide, or 3x telephoto camera, everything just looks great. It has this artsy yet distinct look to it that I really liked from the Oppo Find X6 Pro. The colors are pretty accurate with just the right amount of contrast in every photo. The processing, like I said, is near perfect. The main camera has enough depth separation from the subject at a certain distance thanks to that stack sensor, and the 3x, man, this 3x is just so nice. It has somewhat of a tele macro lens, which means you can get pretty close to a subject and get a nice natural bokeh out of the camera without using portrait mode. And the best part is OnePlus already added a button to zoom in digitally by cropping in on that 64 megapixel sensor to give you a nice high quality 6x digital zoom shot. And the ultra wide, it's probably the best ultra wide I've seen on a foldable. It can shoot macro-like shots too, just like the 3x zoom lens. Now indoors or in less ideal lighting, it can be quite tricky with an apparent shutter lag to compensate for the right exposure. But once the photos are done processing, it's kind of scary how good photos turn out. I've shot probably over 150 photos on this phone already, and I'm really impressed with the cameras on this. Now, when it comes to videos, it's not the best that I've seen on any phone, but probably one of the better ones that I've used in terms of a foldable. But it's not really anything special, but indoors or in less ideal lighting, autofocus will tend to hunt every now and then, but when you're outside on a nice sunny day, this phone can capture pretty incredible videos. And yeah, this is the OnePlus Open. Finally, Samsung has some competition when it comes to foldables, and I think if you're looking for a foldable that doesn't compromise on its cameras and you want to experience the next gen of display technology, the OnePlus Open is an instant buy. Plus, with its starting price of $1699 for a 16 gig and 512 gig storage option, and the $200 off when you trade in any phone in any condition, makes this phone so much more appealing to the everyday consumers. Now, of course, you can trade in a much newer phone and cut the price even lower, but man, I really do think that this is the best foldable of the year and the foldable that everyone should buy if you're looking for your first fold.